Welcome back to Scott's Music Cave, here again with Chris Agnew, and in this video we're going to look at his Selmer Supreme 2022 limited edition 641 made.
Yes, someone at Selmer, their entire job is to count how many pieces are in a saxophone, I guess, and their answer was 641, and this is number 19. So there's 640 others. This is the other one.
Nice. So we're going to do an up-close tabletop review and talk about some of the interesting features and the engraving and all the stuff that makes this saxophone unique to the other Selmer Supremes. Let's get started. All right, let's start with the case. You'll notice it says Model 2022 here, and it's got this textured finish, which we're not sure if that came on the Supreme or not, but obviously it's on the Model 2022, and you have this gold strip here on the case. Outside of the case. On the inside of the case, you have this dust cover with the replication of the engraving that's on the saxophone. And it also came with an end plug that says Model 2022, which is really nice.
I believe that's grenadilla wood, which is the same things they put in a clarinet. So if you buy this, you get part of a clarinet.
Yeah, and the old Selmers had a grenadilla end plugs similar to this, but not the same.
It's fancy.
Yeah, let's move on to the saxophone. Okay, Chris, tell us about this saxophone.
Oh my gosh. So it's kind of it is a work of art. It's number 19 of 641 that they made, and it's got lots of wonderful engravings here. It's the same as the dust cloth pattern that's in the case. It's got black pearl for the keys. It's got like a matte metal finish on some of these key guards here. It says on the neck, on the other side, I believe, number 19 out of 641, if you wanted to hold it up real close. So it's unique in that even amongst those, it's basically like the mini serial number of the instrument. There's wonderful engravings along the bell. A lot of it is jazz focused or celebrating perhaps American music, perhaps music across the globe. It's a little hard to interpret and dissect all of it, but it seems to be representing a lot of the history of the saxophone. And if you look on Selmer's website, I'm sure they have a very wonderful description of what all of those mean, but I think it is very beautiful.
Yeah, I really like it, and one thing I noticed is there is a little band scene here. You can definitely see a bass, at least an upright bass, and a tenor saxophone player and a clarinet player.
Yeah. In the middle, there's I hesitate to call it a weight because some players who get a custom weight on their instrument is quite large, but I think it is, and it's a little decorative Selmer weight there, which is I think is pretty cool. There are a few parts on this horn that have gold plating. I believe it's the parts that your thumbs touch the most, so the thumb rest here, and as well as the thumb pad on the top for your left hand. Which in my experience is great because I have very acidic hands and the gold seems to be pretty resistant to it. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I believe the neck joint as well is gold. So Scott, why don't you tell me a little bit more about the neck clamp there? I think you mentioned that when we first got the horn.
Yeah, so this neck clamping mechanism, you notice how that swivels around. On most saxophones that's soldered and there's one slit that it clamps, and if you can hopefully see that. I think you can, yeah. This actually has 3 slits, and so when this clamps, it clamps evenly all the way around the neck. And most saxophones just clamp in the front, so it's got a really nice, secure, even clamping mechanism, which I really dig. SML's had that. It works really well.
So if it doesn't clamp evenly, you run the risk of potential leaks on the neck joint?
If the necks fit well, that won't be an issue. And it's a great design, and yeah, I don't know why more people don't do that.
So what are some of the other things you might have noticed on this kind of special model of saxophone? I know this is one of, or maybe the first Supreme you've actually worked on. What are some things that you noticed mechanically that are maybe a little different? I noticed as a player that occasionally some of the keys are slightly different position, different key heights. So like on the right hand here, you have the palm keys essentially. They were a little bit angled differently than the Series 3 I was used to.
Well, you're a lot more familiar with the Series 3s because that was your main horn before this one. The ergonomics on this saxophone, I think, they just fit your hand really well. So you tell me, what are some of the things that you thought were different going from this to the Series 3? From the Series
3 to the Supreme? Well, the intonation is just superior. One could say Supreme. I don't know if that's why they not made it the name of that model, or if they really like Taco Bell. But the low B flat especially, it feels like the tube is just a bit longer and it's not quite so sharp.
Okay.
It's not totally perfectly in tune, because I feel like if you would play it expecting it to be a bit sharp, but it was perfect, you would play it flat every time. Yeah. But it's wonderful. I just, you think, oh, it's going to be in tune, and then it is. The same thing for some of the short tube notes, B, C, C sharp. They're in toning. So it's the same thing for B, C, C sharp. The tuning is just a lot better on those in general. It's very even across the horn. Every instrument has its own idiosyncrasies, but I think overall it's much better intonation. Also, I've noticed that it's a bit difficult to explain, but I like to make some of my own custom fingerings, and I've noticed that on this model I have a little bit more freedom, where if I leave this note down because it's a little faster, I have more options on this horn. It seems to play over not real quote-unquote fingerings, but more efficient ones that I like to just come up with and use.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And the type of music you play is so much more complicated than like what I play. So you have to have an instrument like this to perform what you're doing.
I appreciate the complexity of this horn, but also maybe your music is complex in other ways that are different. But the complexity of this horn really allows me to just kind of enjoy the music that I'm playing. I don't have to fight the horn. I can come up with all these unique fingerings and problem solve any passage that kind of comes my way. And not pictured here is a few other collectible items that came with the Model 22, but I already had a concept mouthpiece. The concept was the same. However, it came with a similar to these key guards, a gunmetal black metal mouthpiece cap, which is really cool. And also, if you look on the neck here, you can see that it has the same sort of matte, gunmetal color to it. The reason that the other things are not pictured here, it came with special cork grease and a special cleaning swab, and I thought, oh, well, to preserve the history of the instrument, which it feels like it will be in a museum eventually, I could just use a regular cleaning swab and regular cork grease, and then put everything else in a box to preserve it. So they work functionally, I imagine, just great, but more of a collectible side of getting the horn than what I'm using it for playing purposes.
Yeah, very cool.
It is one of those things I have to be careful in rehearsals, because it's shiny and it has all these wonderful illustrations you can get lost in. So if you're just kind of waiting and counting your rest for the conductor to come back to you, sometimes you can get lost by just kind of looking at it. It's got wonderful. Every time I look at it, I find something I didn't notice before.
Yeah, it is really interesting to look at. Yeah, I just noticed the dancers there.
Yeah,
the swing dancers. Yeah, what a great horn.
Yeah, it's really a work of art. It's weird that I'm playing a work of art to make more work of art. And I felt a little guilty at first playing it, because I was like, wait, no, it's going to get worn out. I'm going to get scratches on it eventually. So far, so good. Fingers crossed. I hope this stays in as good a condition as long as possible, because it really is pretty good to look at.
How long have you had it?
Maybe about a year, a little over a year, I think, at this point. My mom got it for me as a surprise gift for finishing school, which I'm almost done with, but I was finished on my coursework. My understanding from her is that this was the first Model 22 that was in the US. I'm sure more have been there since, and they probably sent so many to every country that would want one, but I think this one may have officially or unofficially been the first Model 22 that was in the US. The only other thing on this horn, I think, I don't know if we can get a good look at it on the camera, but the pads and resonators on this,
good point.
if you want to hold that up so you can see that, there's unique, and I don't know, I think they sound great, but the pads and resonators on this horn are also different than the regular Supreme. They're a different metal. They have a different shape to them entirely. I'm not quite sure. I've never seen ones like that before.
Yeah, it's a really interesting design, and that's been kind of a topic that I've talked about with some people. Is some would put that design on there, but they don't never did explain why. But the horn plays so well that
It could be the pads and
could be the
resonators.
pads and resonators. It's really
It
hard
could
to
be
say.
another decoration on a very decorated horn.
Yeah, they are pretty tall resonators, and so it does give the sound a little more surface to bounce off of in theory. So it could do something.
It could be.
It's hard to measure something like that, though.
Well, all of the decorations and different materials added up, though. I have had the opportunity to play test this and a different regular Supreme that I think was silver plated.
Oh.
With a good friend of mine, and we both found that each saxophone sounded unique from the other. So we played our own, we swapped, played again, did a lot of listening, and this does have a little bit of a different sound than the regular Supremes do.
Very interesting. Yeah, I really like how it sounds. I heard it played today between that and a solid silver saxophone. So
Yeah.
it was amazing the difference between the two. And they both sounded really good. Just they both have their own qualities.
Yeah, I kind of like to look at it like, a box of, Crayola crayons where it's, which color is best. That's your opinion. But it's cool that models that even look so similar, apart from the decorations, sound completely different, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for working on this and getting it, set up for...
Thanks so much for coming on the channel, Chris, and showing us that beautiful Summer Supreme 2022.
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you. Cut.